we're going to tell you how we met.
Okay, so this is from my perspective. I'm sure Lilah has her own perspective. So we're going to share both. So I was in the process of starting this little preschool. Actually, I had already started it. And the preschool was growing rapidly, and it was a dual language immersion preschool. So our students were English home language speakers and they were learning Spanish. And we, at the time, we were growing. Like, we started with 8 little students. It was this little co-op. And then all of a sudden we were at 60 students. So then friends invited us to a Tom Petty concert. And while there, they actually had this nice box. And so there were a few people in the box. And I found out that Lilah was at the time a teacher in one of the dual language immersion schools, actually like the only one in our area. And so I was like, okay, this is the woman. She's going to be my friend. And so she's trying to listen to the concert, but I am kind of like, I get on one thing and that's all I can think about. So I'm like, going on and on about, okay, so here's what I think we should do. And I want to try this and we need to implement and how does your school and program do this, and on and on and on. And so I think finally we just agreed to meet because I really do think Lilah wanted to focus on the concert and I was more interested in making sure I knew everything possible about the one school in our area. So that was the beginning of our story.
So my perspective on that is very similar. It's very similar. I too was invited. Actually, the person who invited Stacey was the same person that invited me. We were mutual friends, but we didn't quite know that at the time. And we were very excited to go and be in the box. And Tom Petty's one of my favorite artists. So I was super excited to see him. And very quickly, we realized that we had this connection around language learning and dual language immersion programs. And so we hit it off right away, Stacey and I did. But as she alluded, I was there to see Tom Petty. Like, I love Tom Petty. I know I was ready to sing along to all the songs. And I did have Stacey in my ear, like, all the questions. So we definitely hit it off, obviously, because we are now 19 years later and business partners and best friends. And we've been doing this a really long time together. But it started at Tom Petty and it was full of music, but also full of connection. And we just, at that point then, yes, we did agree to meet after and we've never stopped meeting. We started meeting and we started collaborating, and it was really cool because Stacey was able to bring the potential board members to tour through our school and to see what it actually looked like in the works and how the students sounded and what the program looked like. And so that was just the very beginning of how all of this came to be. And here we are. Here we are now.
Here we are 20 years later. So then what? So first we collaborated, like Lilah said. So she moved from teacher to principalship because she is highly skilled, highly organized, and tends to see solutions to problems really quickly.
Where's the comment box? I have a solution.
Yeah, exactly. And I am probably more theoretical, and I like to take what second language acquisition research theory says and then make it applicable to the classroom. So I was leading the program at where the preschool ended up and turned into a dual language program. And so I was leading that program, and Lilah had then become principal of this large school that was growing rapidly. And we just, like she said, we never stopped meeting because I'm constantly wanting to push the envelope and I have these big ideas about what to do, but practicality isn't always my strong suit. So Lilah would, instead of saying no, she would say, okay, well, how would that actually look in practice? And so we just began trying out things in our own programs. Like, you started that whole West Michigan Alliance of teachers, the language teachers, because by that time a couple more schools had opened up, and you wanted to collectively combine like our knowledge, really. So Lilah and I started hosting those. Do you want to share a little bit about that?
Sure. Yeah, we came together because That was one of the very first things that we did
Yeah.
together, because even though the program you were starting, it was, newer teachers were being hired, and some of the teachers that I was working with that were in my program had been teaching in dual language programs for a while. We still knew that everybody had something to
Yeah.
contribute. And so while oftentimes, because the program I was in was one of the first in the area, people looked to us as the leaders, realistically, I knew that my teachers needed to learn from your teachers and other teachers
Yeah.
in the area as well. So it became a real collaborative experience. We brought teachers together. We would always have like dinner or snacks or something, and we would go to various schools. But we did that with the intention of highlighting what teachers were doing in the classroom, giving additional professional development types of
Yeah.
experiences, but making sure that teachers were walking away with new ideas and, most importantly, new connections with each other. It can be a very isolating field, especially at that time, 20 years ago. There weren't so many dual language programs in the US at all. And so we wanted to build a community for teachers and leaders as well, to have a place to go to talk
For
with each
sure.
other, to get ideas, because what we were doing was different. It was
Yeah.
different from our colleagues potentially in the same school that were teaching in a monolingual English classroom. So yeah, that was one of the very first things that we tackled together, and it was really powerful. I think that organization is still going on to this day.
I do too. And I think what was interesting though is I think Lila and I are both like this. If you're not, speak up, but I've known you for 20 years. So it's like we wanted the best experience for our students and for our teachers. But what we started to do is really look at all of the things we had both done in our programs that worked and those that didn't. What we developed then was an education plan for starting programs with transparency and making sure that everybody had the same information, because we were getting calls to help other schools start programs.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I think another thing that we started focusing on once we officially became Addalingua was the beginning of our spiraling scope and sequence
Yeah.
and our frameworks. Because in my experience, I was given the stack of curriculum that we had at my district, and I was told to just teach it in Spanish, which, I mean, I could figure that out for math and science and social studies, but I really had no idea what I was doing for English language arts. How was I supposed to teach that in Spanish, but make it so that it made sense for the acquisition of Spanish, but didn't harm the acquisition of English? And there were just so many moving parts and pieces to that that I had to, you were figuring it out at your program
Yeah.
as well, but we were
Mhm.
figuring out how to do this in the best way possible without any guidance. And in my case, we had a program that grew very quickly, and all of a sudden we had 3 to 5 teachers at each grade level. So each of those teachers was doing just that, the very best that he or she could, trying to figure that piece out. But there was a lack of consistency that we were seeing. And so we really wanted to create a backbone for teachers to to use to know how to teach Spanish in a sequential way that made sense for the acquisition of Spanish, but also then led into the English acquisition and study at whatever grade level it was that English was officially introduced. And so that was a big part of our first work together.
And I think what drove that work in a big part was both of our programs, our students, they were testing well in English on English. And at that time, I think in third grade, there were state standardized tests. So even though, particularly in my program, we didn't even have any English instruction until third grade, our students were still performing as well or better than their peers in the traditional settings. And I know, Lila, your students were performing really well.
Mhm.
Where what we were both concerned about was the proficiency levels in Spanish, because we had stood up in front of families and said, "Oh, your students are going to be bilingual." One of the things that we really thought a lot about was proficiency in Spanish, not because for job opportunities or, ooh, bilingualism can do a lot for the brain. But it was deeper than that for both of us, and we both have kind of this social justice, not kind of, where we don't like to see injustice, and we get all kinds of hot and bothered by it. And our platform became, you know, if languages other than English were not seen as valuable, we had witnessed how then the people who spoke it were not seen as valuable, and the damage and the destruction that that causes. And that made us angry, to be honest. And so I think we were so about proficiency in languages like Spanish and Chinese. And because in our minds, if we could show by our actions and everything we do in the school that this language was important and valuable, then it would send the message that so too were people who speak different languages other than English, because as you know, our education system is very monolingual in nature. And we really just wanted to change that. It wasn't right for the students who entered with home languages other than English. The stories we heard from some of the teachers we ended up hiring about their experience in schools was devastating. We had seen it firsthand ourselves. And so making sure that that goal of bilingualism and biliteracy was going to drive everything we developed and did was important, because we thought then students will actually change. I mean, not just in their ability to speak languages, but actually have the ability to connect across languages and cultures, to see and experience aspects of others' lives in a whole different way. That seems to be what happens when you acquire another language. We thought this can be transformative. This is not just about language learning and the cognitive and academic benefits. This is so much bigger. And I think we already knew that about each other, even from that first meeting in the Tom Petty concert. There was just that little like, oh, you're a I don't know, soul sister. I don't know what the heck to call it.
I think we used to say fellow traveler until we realized that there was some other connotation.
That's what the Communist Party used. But anyway,
Funny.
so yeah, so I think that really became the foundation for everything we did, is really raising the status of the partner language without compromising English at all. And that's why we just kept pushing that envelope. Let's see what we can actually do to get our students to increase partner language proficiency without actually having any repercussions on their English achievement. So,
Yep.
yeah,
That's what we do.
that is what we do. Yeah.